way.
Dude, that's crazy, bro.
Yeah, exactly. It's the tefillah of Elokai Neshama that we say every morning. That we say that God, you put a level of consciousness inside of me, which is the most undiluted, purest God consciousness that exists in the world. This is all found in the second chapter of the Tanya. So if anybody's really into going into a deep dive, you have to open the second chapter of the Tanya. Maybe what we'll do, Nether will open that tomorrow based on this prayer that we say every morning, because that's where the real juice comes in. What we're essentially talking about is that spark, and to make it simplified, it's the most undiluted, pure, godly consciousness that's one step, i.e. the closest thing to God himself, absolute godliness. The closest thing to God himself is inside of us. And that part of me is totally pure, is totally good, and has no other motivations. That's essentially the part of me that pulls me towards good things, that I usually tell them to, excuse my friends, will you shut up already? And Rabbi Nachman discusses that part of us. You know, Hitler, who was a very evil person, he says the Jews put two blemishes onto humanity. The blemish of the body and the blemish of the soul. What was the blemish of the body? The bris milah, which we know is not a blemish, it's an act of perfection. And what was the blemish of the soul? That the Jews introduced to humanity the idea of a conscience. He called that a blemish. A conscience, which is a voice inside of us that says what's right and what's wrong. So that's the voice, is that pure soul. When you know your higher self telling you to do something which is right. How do you tap into that higher self? It's called learning Torah. Your soul and the Torah and God is like as close as possible. That's the ultimate. So we're going to talk more about what that soul is. One of the things that we're going to learn today is that God, different than every single part of creation, how is everything created in creation? It's right there. There's a Tanya right there. Thank you. Everything in creation is created through, and God spoke, and God spoke. V'yomer Elokim, and God spoke, and God spoke. Right? God is doing a lot of speaking. V'nefesh hashenis b'Yisrael hi chelek elokam mal mamish, is a piece of God, literally. Meaning, it can't be God, because then you'd start worshiping human beings. So it's a piece. But it's mamish, literally. It's literally a piece of God. You get that?
Can't like have a piece though.
So that's the idea. The piece means it's some type of, it's made up of the stuff. It's made up of the God stuff. It's coming from that. Like a ray of light coming from the sun. Is it the sun? Well, it is, but it's, so to speak, a piece. It's emerging. It's coming from the sun. And God, you blew into us a living soul. Which is exactly today. This tefillah. You blew it into me. Like it says in the Holy Zohar, somebody who blows from his inside, blows from his essence. I want to talk about this tomorrow, so we're going to revisit this Tanya tomorrow. Let's go through the tefillah, and we're going to see that what's different from the soul is every single thing in creation is spoken into creation, whereas the soul is breathed into creation. I want you to think about the difference between speaking something into creation and breathing something into creation. Then that's going to be the beginning of what is this soul? What makes it unique? Okay, this is the beginning of the story. Thank you. So we said yesterday that God, you put this soul in me. And it's tahoirahi. It's pure. It's pure. The Gemara says in Shabbos, Kuf Nun Beis Amid Beis, it's good to look these Gemaras up, 152, folio B. You have to return your soul to God in the way that God gave it to you. Just like God gave it to you in a pure state. Also, you have to return it to God in a pure state. I'm putting the soul into you in a pure way. Make sure you return it to me in a pure way. There were those that didn't want to say tahirahi. They wanted to say neshama shenosata bi tahor or tahira, but not tahirahi, meaning it was tahor, but things happened. There are those that say that you should still say tahirahi, because even if you did stuff, the essence of your soul never becomes contaminated. So you still say tahirahi, it is pure. You're right, the external part of my soul might have become a little bit contaminated. But the inside, if I take a diamond, Tavi, and the diamond falls into some sludgy, messy, ichsa, fichsa, these are Israeli words. Tadi, it's ichsa, fichsa, sludge. And you look at that diamond. How do you relate to that diamond? Especially if you didn't know that there was a diamond. Ichsa, right? Oh! Is it ichsa?
No.
Is it ichsa?
No, it's just dirty.
Well, the outside is ichsa, but it, nothing happened to the diamond.
Yeah.
Just wash it off. Just dip in the mick.
Spot in it.
That's what I'm saying. Everybody going to Tzfat this Shabbos? I'm jealous. I'm jealous. I know, I'm sorry. I'm going to a very, very special wedding in America. So,
I hope you come to my wedding in America.
Bezrat Hashem. That you guys enjoy. The Arizal's mikveh is a very, 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 very special mikveh. The idea being is that the soul also gets a bit schmutzy, gets a bit dirty, got a bit ichsa. So you have to throw it into the mikveh. You have to wash off the outside. So the essence of the soul still is tahirahi. But now we go through a sequence. Ata birasa, you created it. We're talking about the soul. Which means it has some level of not being you mamish. We'll get to something very deep tomorrow from the Tanya. Ata yitzarta, ata nefachta bi. You created it, you fashioned it, and you blew it into me. In Chabad, I heard from, on Gimel Tammuz is the Lubavitcher Rebbe's Yurtzeit. Very exciting times coming. Gimel is Yom Chamishi, is Wednesday night. All of Thursday. I hope to be in the oil on Mitzvah Shem. So I heard from Rabbi Yoel Khan, Zecher Tzad V'Kodesh Livracha, based on all of the Nesiach Chabad, that neshama shenosata b'tahirahi, he gives a Kabbalistic explanation of this, that my neshama is tahirahi. That's the way that it looks up in the world of Atzilus. We're talking about the four worlds here. That's the way that my neshama looks like in what's called Chochma da Atzilus, the highest of the worlds where everything is tahira. That's the essence. But as my soul is coming down through the worlds, if you will, Ata Virasa, you took it through the world of Bria. Bria now, there's all of a sudden creation happening. My soul is from a higher world, but it's starting to get coarser, even though it's all spiritual coarseness. Ata birasa. And then ata yitzarta. That's the world of yitzira. It's coming to the world of yitzira now. More formation, more concealment. Ata nefachta bi, and you even blew it into me. That's the world of Asiya. That's in this world. You blew it into me down in this physical world. So what is it? Absolutely pure. Tahirahi. But as my soul is coming through the spiritual worlds, it gets a bit coarse. It gets a bit
finite.
Finite is a really good way to say that. Finite. Or let's call it less
Animalistic.
or more, as it's coming into the world, it's getting more finite is actually a good way to say it. More identification. More yeshus-y.
What does that mean, yeshus?
Yeshus means more identification. As opposed to the higher up it is, it's more dissolved into the oneness.
Like more measurable.
Down here.
Yeah.
Let's use another analogy going back to the sun and the ray. The further away the ray gets from the sun, the more the ray has identity. Correct? The closer the ray is to the sun, the less identity it has. Until you get to the point where the ray is on top of the sun itself, on the face of the sun. How much identity does the ray have on the face of the sun?
None.
Well, does it have none?
Like none.
It does have an identity, you just can't distinguish it.
That's the truth. What's my proof that it has identity?
When it's far away.
Right, exactly, it's unique.
Well, you use a logical
It's
proof.
it's all one consistent, it's part of one whole. So if part of it we see at the end where our eyes can physically see it, let's say it's a stormy day and we see the shafts going through, I know it's coming from the sun. I can't look at the sun and see it as a part, as its own and not just part of the whole. But because I know it's all one thing and I see that, I can perceive that at one end, so that I can't perceive that at the other end. I know it's still part of that one whole, so it's clearly one.
I know that it's one, but I can even bring like a raya. I can bring even a kal v'chomer. If I see that it has identity down here, far away from its source, far away from where it's shining, certainly where the shine is happening, it has an identity. Meaning, if it's shining down here, far away from the sun, certainly where it's coming from, it's shining.
Right.
It's just you don't see it. You don't notice it when it's on the face of the sun because it's engulfed in the source of where it's coming from. But it's definitely shining up there. If it shines down here, far away, certainly it shines up there. But in perspective, you don't notice it shining because it's so much dissolved into the me'or, into the source of it. So if your soul is down here, shining, is it shining all the way up there? In Tehoirahi, in the world of Chochmah Atzilus? Certainly. But it's more dissolved up there. It's less finite up there. Because it's more dissolved into its essence from whence it came.
So that almost implies that before we're born, or even after we die, that our soul is almost one with Hashem.
Yes. It's as close to Hashem as possible, conceptually. It's like the ray of light on the sun. Whereas when you're born, you get this illusion of the soul getting separate. That's the ray of light all the way down here until it actually looks like separate rays. You could be fooled by the reality.
Independency. Oh, it's independent. Independent.
That's right, independent, that this ray of light is somehow separate from its source. That's called the dirtiness that gets onto the soul. Is you get this guy walking around like, look at me, I'm the man. And you're like, you're the man? Like, who made you the man? If you tell me God, then you're the man. You actually are the man, or woman, whatever. Either one. Human. And you really are legit. Knowing because you are great. But the problem happens when a person believes that his greatness is somehow split off from its source. Which the joke is on him, because you couldn't even have those very thoughts without God shining that into your consciousness. Okay, so this is Rabbi Yoel Khan is explaining that the 4 stages here in the Bracha of Elokai Neshama is the stages of the soul coming down from Chochmah Atzilus into your body here, which is awesome. That's awesome. Okay? The Marsha adds another pshat that the 3 Ata Barasa, Ata Yitzarta, Ata Nefachta Bi is talking about the 3 lower levels of the soul. Ata Barasa, Bria, is talking about the most fundamental part of your soul. That's the Nefesh. What's the pasuk? V'yivra Elokim es ha'adam, and God created the man. That's talking about the animalistic, basic, energizing soul. But then there's higher levels of you. The Ruach HaChiyuni, which is where your free will lies, is Ata Yitzarta. And that's where there's more distinguished creation, where the verse says, V'yitzer Hashem Elokim es ha'adam, and God fashioned man. Now he's being distinguished. He's no longer a Neanderthal or Homo sapien. He's now becoming refined with free will, with intelligence. And then on the neshama, higher level, ata nefachta bi, that level is the yipach ba'ap of nishmas chaim, and God blew into Adam's nostrils the living soul. Okay? So these are things that we're thinking about, meditating on, in fact, as we're going through this bracha. Bli neder, tomorrow we're going to finish this bracha right away, and then we'll open up the Tanya and go into what the nature, even in more detail, and it's going to be a bit mature content when we open the Tanya, of what the godly soul really is all about. We should be Zoicha Mamish tomorrow, today, Hayoim. Hayoim, like when the great rabbis saw Eliyahu Hanavi and they said, when is Moshiach coming? So Eliyahu said, today. And the next day they saw that Moshiach didn't come, and they said, Elijah, what happened? I thought Moshiach was coming today. Hayoim. So he finished the verse, Hayoim. Like King David says, we read this in L'chu Neranina, the first of the Psalms of David that we read in Kabbalah Shabbos on Friday night. Hayoim, today, im bekoile tishmon. I'll come today if you listen to the voice of God. So I hope that Hayoim, the Mashiach is going to come today, that we finally, once and for all, humanity listens well to Hashem, listens to God. We should be Zoicha Mamish, the bin Beis HaMikdash, b'mher v'yameinu, amen ve'amen. Kol Tov, my friends. Have a wonderful day. Hatzlacha. Toda Rabbah.